What was your fuck the shit I'm out moment? I'd been seeing Dr. Valentina Cross for anxiety after my dad's gambling addiction destroyed our finances. She seemed perfect, warm, understanding, expensive office in the medical district. Insurance covered most of it, which felt like a miracle given our situation. For 8 months, I spilled everything. Dad's debts, mom's drinking, my brother's drug problems, my own struggles with self-harm. Audrey. Cross listened with such empathy, taking detailed notes, asking probing questions about our family's secrets. Tell me more about your father's business associates, she'd say. How does your mother cope when he disappears for days? I thought she was helping me process trauma. Instead, she was building a case file. The truth came out during my cousin Ophelia's wedding. I was in the hotel bathroom when I overheard 2 women talking in the next stall. Did you see the Blackwood family? They look terrible. I heard they're being blackmailed. Someone has recordings of the son discussing the father's illegal gambling debts. My blood froze. Blackwood was our last name. Apparently, whoever has the tapes wants $2 million or they'll send everything to the FBI. The father's been laundering money through his restaurant for years. I stumbled out of the bathroom, my head spinning. The only person who knew those details was Dr. Cross. That night, I broke into her office building. Security was minimal. Just a keypad I'd watched her enter countless times. Her office was on the 4th floor, tucked behind a maze of medical suites. What I found made me sick. Her desk drawers were filled with USB drives labeled with patient names. Mine read, Blackwood. Gambling, laundering, family dysfunction. High value. There were dozens of others. Political figures, judges, business owners, all with detailed blackmail summaries. Her computer was still logged in. I found email chains discussing payment schedules, threats, even a spreadsheet tracking which families had paid and which were in process. Dr. Cross wasn't just recording sessions illegally. She was running an extortion ring using patient confessions. I photographed everything, downloaded what I could, and left. The next morning, I called her office. I won't be needing any more appointments, I told her receptionist. Is everything all right? Dr. Cross specifically asked me to schedule you for this week. Tell her I know about the recordings. Silence. I'm sorry. I don't understand. She'll understand. I hung up and drove straight to the FBI field office. Agent Morrison seemed skeptical until I showed him the photos and audio files. We've been investigating Dr. Cross for months, he admitted, but we needed evidence from the inside. They raided her office that afternoon. Local news called it the largest psychotherapy blackmail scheme in state history. 17 families had been paying her anywhere from $50,000 to $5 million to keep their secrets buried. My testimony was crucial for the prosecution. Yesterday, Dr. Cross was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. But this morning, I received a package with no return address. Inside was a single photograph, me walking into the FBI building 6 months ago. On the back, someone had written, Dr. Cross had partners. We have your new address. Attached was a key and a note. Storage Unit 247. Come alone or your family pays. I stared at that key for 20 minutes, turning it over in my hands like it might reveal some hidden message. The metal was cold, standard storage unit issue, with 247 etched into the plastic tag. No clues about which facility, but there were only 3 storage places within reasonable driving distance of our neighborhood. My first instinct was to call Agent Morrison. He'd handled the Dr. Cross case with professionalism, and I trusted him more than anyone in law enforcement. But the note's warning echoed in my head. Come alone or your family pays. These people had already proven they could find us. We'd moved twice since the trial, thinking we were safe. Dad had closed the restaurant and started working construction under a different name. Mom had been sober for 4 months, attending meetings religiously. My brother had just finished his 2nd stint in rehab and was living in a halfway house across town. For the first time in years, our family was healing. I wasn't about to let Dr. Cross's partners destroy that progress. I decided to scout the storage facilities first, see if I could identify which one without alerting anyone. The closest was Eastside Storage, a rundown collection of orange metal buildings surrounded by chain-link fence. I drove past slowly, noting the numbered units. The 200s were in the back section, tucked behind a row of larger units that could hide a car, perfect for an ambush. The second facility, Metro Self-Storage, was newer and brighter, with better lighting and security cameras visible at every turn. Too public for whatever these people were planning. That left Riverside Storage, a mid-sized operation near the old industrial district where Dad used to meet his gambling contacts. The irony wasn't lost on me. I parked across the street and observed for an hour. The facility seemed normal, people loading and unloading belongings, an elderly manager reading a newspaper in the office. But Unit 247 was positioned in an isolated corner where someone could wait unseen. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. TikTok. Your brother looks vulnerable walking alone at night. Attached was a photo of my brother leaving his halfway house, taken just yesterday. His sponsor always warned residents about walking the same route every night, but old habits die hard. These people had been watching us, learning our patterns. I had no choice. That evening, I told my parents I was meeting friends for dinner. Mom was cooking for the first time in months, humming while she chopped vegetables. Dad was helping, reading recipe ingredients aloud. They looked like the parents I remembered from childhood, before gambling consumed our lives. I couldn't risk destroying this fragile piece. At Riverside Storage, the main gate was locked, but the fence had gaps large enough to squeeze through. I'd brought my phone, pepper spray, and the tire iron from my car. Not much protection, but better than nothing. Unit 247 was exactly where I'd expected, tucked between larger units that blocked the view from the office. The key fit perfectly. As the metal door rolled up, motion sensor lights flickered on, illuminating the contents. What I saw made my stomach drop. The walls were covered with surveillance photos, dozens of families going about their daily lives, my brother walking to work, my parents at the grocery store, me leaving my apartment. But we weren't the only targets. I recognized several faces from the news coverage of Dr. Cross's trial. Judge Harrison, who'd sentenced her, District Attorney Foster, who'd prosecuted the case, even Agent Morrison, photographed outside his children's school. A folding table in the center held 3 laptops, all displaying different surveillance feeds. One showed the lobby of my apartment building in real time. Another tracked my brother's halfway house. The third cycled between various locations around the city. On the table sat a manila folder labeled Phase 2. Inside were detailed profiles of everyone who testified against Dr. Cross. Not just basic information, financial records, family schedules, medical histories, personal relationships. Someone had spent months compiling ammunition for a comprehensive revenge campaign. The final page was a timeline. Today's date was circled in red, with one word written underneath, beginning. You're earlier than expected. I spun around to find a woman in her 50s standing in the doorway, well-dressed, with silver hair and kind eyes that didn't match the gun in her hand. She looked like someone's grandmother, not a criminal mastermind. Dr. Patricia Vance, she said, as if introducing herself at a dinner party. I was Dr. Cross's business partner and supervisor. The pieces clicked into place. Dr. Cross had always mentioned consulting with a senior colleague about complex cases. I'd assumed it was standard practice, not knowing she was reporting to the head of a blackmail operation. You destroyed something beautiful, Dr. Vance continued, stepping into the unit while keeping the gun trained on me. Valentina and I had built the perfect system. Patients confessing their deepest secrets, thinking they were healing. Instead, they were providing us with leverage over the most powerful people in the city. You were hurting innocent families. She laughed, a sound completely devoid of warmth. Innocent? Your father laundered money for organized crime. Judge Harrison takes bribes from defense attorneys. District Attorney Foster buried evidence in rape cases. We weren't blackmailing innocent people. We were controlling criminals who happened to hold positions of power. That doesn't give you the right. The right? Her voice rose, and I saw madness flickering behind those kind eyes. I've spent 30 years watching corrupt officials destroy lives while hiding behind their positions. We were the only ones holding them accountable. I thought about Agent Morrison's warning during the trial. These people don't see themselves as criminals. They think they're vigilantes. Where are your other partners? I asked, trying to keep her talking while scanning for escape routes. There are no others. Just me now. Valentina was always the public face, but I was the architect. She's rotting in prison because you couldn't mind your own business. Dr. Vance reached into her jacket and pulled out a tablet, swiping to a video feed that showed my parents' house. They were sitting on the couch, watching television, completely unaware of the danger. Here's what's going to happen, she said. You're going to help me rebuild what you destroyed, starting with your family's cooperation. My family has nothing you want. Oh, but they do. Your father's gambling debts created connections to some very interesting people. Money launderers, loan sharks, corrupt cops who look the other way. Information that could be valuable to the right buyers. She swiped to another screen showing financial records I'd never seen before. Numbers that made my head spin, hundreds of thousands of dollars in transactions between Dad's restaurant and accounts I didn't recognize. Your father thought he was clever, hiding his activities from his family. But addiction makes people sloppy. Every transaction, every phone call, every desperate deal, I have it all documented. My phone buzzed with an incoming call. Dr. Vance gestured for me to answer. Hello? I said, my voice barely steady. Is this the Blackwood residence? The voice was artificially distorted, clearly using some kind of voice modifier. Who is this? Someone watching your parents right now. They're having tea in the living room. Your mother just got up to check the locks on the front door. Smart woman. I looked at Dr. Vance, who smiled and mouthed, Phase 2. What do you want? I asked the caller. Your cooperation. Dr. Vance will explain the terms. Follow them exactly, or your family's safety cannot be guaranteed. The line went dead. Dr. Vance holstered her gun and pulled out a thick folder from behind one of the laptops. Consider this your new job description, she said. You're going to help me reestablish contact with our former clients. Many of them stopped paying when Valentina was arrested, thinking the threat was gone. They need to understand that our operation is still very much alive. She opened the folder to reveal a list of names I recognized from the trial. Wealthy families, political figures, business leaders, all people who'd been paying Dr. Cross to keep their secrets buried. You want me to threaten them? I want you to remind them of the consequences of non-compliance. You've seen what happens when people cross us. Your testimony put Valentina in prison, but it also demonstrated how thoroughly we document everything. Dr. Vance pulled out a USB drive identical to the ones I'd found in Dr. Cross's office. This contains every recording, every document, every piece of evidence from the original operation, plus everything we've gathered since. Your family's complete financial history, Judge Harrison's gambling addiction, District Attorney Foster's history of sexual assault, Agent Morrison's wife's medical records. She was right about one thing. They'd been busy. If I refuse, Dr. Vance swiped her tablet to a new camera feed. This one showed my brother walking alone down a dark street, completely unaware of the black sedan following slowly behind him. Your brother has struggled with addiction. Overdoses happen so tragically often, especially to people in recovery. One contaminated dose, one moment of weakness. My hands clenched into fists. Leave him alone. Then we have an understanding. You'll start tomorrow morning with Judge Harrison. He's been particularly stubborn about resuming payments. Remind him that his gambling debts to the Torino family make excellent FBI evidence. She handed me a business card with only a phone number printed on it. You'll call this number every evening at 6 to report your progress. Miss a call, and we'll assume you've decided not to cooperate. Dr. Vance gathered her materials and headed toward the door, then paused. One more thing. Agent Morrison has been asking questions about Valentina's associates. You'll help us monitor his investigation and report anything useful. Consider it professional development. After she left, I sat alone in that storage unit for nearly an hour, staring at the surveillance photos on the walls. Dozens of innocent people. Their daily lives turned into weapons against them. Children walking to school. Elderly couples at doctor's appointments. Young families just trying to survive. This wasn't justice or accountability. It was predatory control masquerading as moral authority. But Dr. Vance had made her position clear. comply, or watch my family suffer the consequences. I thought about calling Agent Morrison, but the tablet had shown feeds from inside our houses. These people were watching us constantly, listening to our phone calls, tracking our movements. Any attempt to contact law enforcement would be detected immediately. I was trapped. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove to the courthouse where Judge Harrison presided over criminal cases. According to Dr. Vance's file, he owed nearly $500,000 to Tony Torino, a loan shark with connections to organized crime families. The judge had been making small payments for years, but Dr. Cross's arrest had emboldened him to stop entirely. Now he was 6 months behind, and Tony was getting impatient. I waited in the courthouse lobby until Judge Harrison's morning session ended. He was a distinguished man in his early 60s, with silver hair and the kind of commanding presence that made lawyers nervous. As he walked toward the elevator, I intercepted him. "Judge Harrison, my name is Alex Blackwood. I need to speak with you about Dr. Valentina Cross." His face went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The gambling debts. Tony Torino. The photographs of you at the casino on nights when you told your wife you were working late." He grabbed my arm and pulled me into an empty conference room, looking around nervously before closing the door. "Dr. Cross is in prison. This is over. Her operation wasn't a one-person business, Your Honor, and your debt has grown to $600,000 with interest and penalties." I hated every word coming out of my mouth, but Dr. Vance's threats against my family echoed in my head. Judge Harrison sat down heavily in one of the conference room chairs. "I never hurt anyone. The gambling was personal. It didn't affect my professional duties. Tony Torino might disagree. He's been very patient, but patience has limits, especially when the FBI starts investigating his business relationships." I pulled out a photograph of Judge Harrison shaking hands with Tony outside a casino. In the background, clear as day, was a man I recognized from news reports as Vincent Torino, Tony's nephew and an alleged captain in the Marcelli crime family. This was taken 3 weeks ago. The FBI would be very interested in a federal judge's relationship with organized crime figures. "What do you want?" "Resume your monthly payments. $50,000, same as before. Dr. Cross's associates will contact you with new payment instructions." Judge Harrison's hands were shaking as he reached for his phone. "I'll need time to arrange the transfer. You have 24 hours. And Judge, no more missed payments. The consequences will be severe." I left him sitting in that conference room, head in his hands, and felt like the worst person alive. But when I checked my phone, there was a text message showing my brother safely arriving at his job at a local auto shop. The message was simple. "Good work. He's safe today." Over the next 2 weeks, I visited 8 other former clients of Dr. Cross's operation. A city councilman who'd been embezzling funds from a homeless shelter. A police captain who'd been covering up evidence in domestic violence cases. A prominent businessman whose tax evasion schemes had cost the city millions in lost revenue. Each conversation followed the same pattern. Show them evidence of their crimes. Remind them of the consequences of exposure. Demand resumed payments to Dr. Vance's operation. And each time, I hated myself a little more. The worst was District Attorney Rebecca Foster. Her file revealed a pattern of burying sexual assault cases against wealthy defendants in exchange for campaign contributions. 3 women had been denied justice because DA Foster valued political donations over prosecutorial integrity. I found her at a coffee shop near the courthouse, reviewing case files over lunch. "Ms. Foster, I'm Alex Blackwood. I testified in the Dr. Cross case." She looked up from her papers with mild interest. "I remember. Your testimony was crucial to our prosecution. How can I help you?" "I'm here about the Amanda Richardson case, and the Jennifer Walsh case, and the Stephanie Moore case." Her face went completely white. "I don't know what you're implying, but..." "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. 3 sexual assault cases buried because the defendants' families made substantial contributions to your campaign fund. Evidence suppressed. Witnesses intimidated. Plea deals offered for crimes that warranted serious prison time." DA Foster gathered her papers with shaking hands. "This conversation is over. Sit down," I said quietly. "Unless you want me to have this conversation with Channel 7 News instead." She sat. I pulled out a folder containing bank records, email communications, and recorded phone calls between DA Foster and defense attorneys representing the 3 attackers. Dr. Cross's operation had been thorough in documenting everything. Amanda Richardson was 19 when she was raped by Daniel Worthington Jr. His family donated $200,000 to your campaign fund. Jennifer Walsh was 23 when she was assaulted by Michael Chen. His father's construction company got the city contract for the new courthouse. Stephanie Moore was 25 when... "Stop," DA Foster whispered. "Just stop. 3 women denied justice. 3 rapists walking free. All because you valued money over doing your job." I leaned forward, looking directly into her eyes. "Dr. Cross's operation is still active. Your cooperation is required to keep these records private. Resume your monthly payments or everything goes public." "How much?" $75,000. Monthly. Same account as before." DA Foster closed her eyes. "I'll need a few days to arrange the transfer. You have 48 hours. And Ms. Foster, no more buried cases. We'll be watching." That evening, I called Dr. Vance's number to report my progress. "Excellent work," she said. "Judge Harrison has already made his first payment. DA Foster will follow suit. You're a natural at this. I want to see my family. Prove they're safe. Of course, your cooperation has been exemplary. Meet me at Riverside Park tomorrow evening. Bring Agent Morrison." "What?" "He's been asking questions about our operation. Time to bring him into the fold." The line went dead before I could protest. I spent that night staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out how to warn Agent Morrison without putting my family at greater risk. Dr. Vance clearly had surveillance capabilities that went far beyond what I'd initially understood. The next morning, I called Agent Morrison's office and arranged to meet him for coffee. "Alex, good to see you," he said as we sat down at a quiet table in the back of the coffee shop. "How are you holding up after everything?" "Actually, that's why I wanted to talk. I think Dr. Cross had more partners than we realized." Agent Morrison leaned forward, his expression becoming serious. "What makes you say that?" I pulled out my phone and showed him the threatening text messages I'd received. Someone has been watching my family. They claim to have all of Dr. Cross's files, and they want to restart the blackmail operation. Why didn't you call me immediately? Because they threatened to hurt my family if I contacted law enforcement. But I can't keep doing this alone. Agent Morrison studied the messages carefully. These are definitely threats. We can put your family under protective surveillance, but I'll need you to tell me everything you know about these people. I took a deep breath and told him about Dr. Vance, the storage unit, and the forced visits to former clients. I left out the specific details of what I'd threatened them with, but made it clear that I was being used to restart the blackmail operation. Dr. Patricia Vance, Agent Morrison repeated, taking notes. I recognize that name. She was mentioned in some of Dr. Cross's files, but we couldn't establish a direct connection. She says she was the real architect of the operation. Dr. Cross was just the public face. That would make sense. Some of the organizational elements seemed too sophisticated for one person to manage alone. Agent Morrison finished his notes and looked up at me. Here's what we're going to do. You're going to wear a wire to your meeting with Dr. Vance tonight. We'll have agents positioned around the park, but they'll stay hidden unless you're in immediate danger. What if she detects the wire? What if her surveillance picks up your agents? We'll use micro equipment she won't be able to spot. And my agents are very good at staying invisible. The important thing is getting her confession on record. I agreed to the plan, but my stomach was churning with anxiety. Dr. Vance had proven she was always one step ahead, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were walking into a trap. That afternoon, FBI technicians fitted me with a wire so small, it was invisible beneath my clothes. Agent Morrison gave me clear instructions on how to guide the conversation toward admissions of criminal activity. Don't push too hard, he warned. Let her talk. People like Dr. Vance often want to explain their motivations. Give her that opportunity. As evening approached, I drove to Riverside Park with my heart pounding. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the empty playground and walking paths. I could see Agent Morrison's team positioned around the park, but only because I knew where to look. Dr. Vance was waiting by the pond, feeding ducks like any normal grandmother enjoying a peaceful evening. She smiled warmly as I approached. Alex, you've exceeded my expectations. Judge Harrison's payment cleared this morning, and DA Foster has confirmed her wire transfer for tomorrow. Good. Can I see my family now? Of course. But first, let's discuss Agent Morrison's investigation. Dr. Vance pulled out her tablet and swiped to a surveillance feed showing Agent Morrison crouched behind a park maintenance building about 50 yards away. Did you really think I wouldn't notice FBI surveillance? She asked, her voice still friendly despite the obvious threat. My blood went cold. I don't know what you're talking about. Alex, I've been doing this for 30 years. I know what federal surveillance looks like. The question is whether you're wearing a wire voluntarily or under duress. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small electronic device that immediately started beeping when she pointed it at my chest. Under duress, I'd say. How disappointing. Dr. Vance pressed a button on her tablet, and I heard explosions in the distance. Not loud, more like firecrackers, but definitely explosive devices. I've just triggered 3 small charges around the park. Nothing that will hurt Agent Morrison's team, but enough to keep them busy while we have our real conversation. She gestured for me to follow her toward the park's maintenance shed, a small building hidden behind a grove of trees. You see, Alex, I knew you'd eventually contact the FBI. It's what good people do when faced with moral dilemmas. But I also knew Agent Morrison would try to use you to gather evidence against me. We reached the maintenance shed, and Dr. Vance produced a key to unlock the door. Inside, the space had been converted into a sophisticated monitoring station with computer equipment and communication devices that definitely didn't belong to the parks department. This is my real office, she explained. Much more secure than a storage unit. I've been monitoring FBI communications for months, waiting for them to make their move. Dr. Vance sat down at one of the computer terminals and pulled up a file containing dozens of audio recordings. Agent Morrison has been investigating not just my operation, but several other organized crime activities in the city. He's very close to exposing some people who would prefer to remain hidden. She clicked on one of the audio files, and I heard Agent Morrison's voice discussing an investigation into corruption within the police department. Corrupt cops don't like federal agents asking questions about their activities. They especially don't like agents who can't be bought or intimidated. What are you saying? I'm saying Agent Morrison has made some dangerous enemies, people who would benefit greatly if he were to have an unfortunate accident during what appeared to be a routine undercover operation. Dr. Vance pulled out a second tablet showing a live video feed of Agent Morrison and his team regrouping after the explosive distractions. In about 10 minutes, they're going to receive a false emergency call about shots fired in the eastern section of the park. When they respond, they'll walk into an ambush arranged by Detective Raymond Kowalski and his associates. Detective Kowalski was one of the names from Dr. Cross's client files, a police officer who'd been taking money from drug dealers in exchange for advance warning about raids. You can't let them kill a federal agent. I'm not killing anyone, Dr. Vance replied calmly. Detective Kowalski is eliminating a threat to his operation. I'm simply providing him with the opportunity and information he needs. She stood up and walked to a weapons locker in the corner of the shed. However, I can save Agent Morrison's life. If you're willing to make a deal, what kind of deal? Dr. Vance opened the locker to reveal several handguns, ammunition, and what looked like police communication equipment. You're going to call Agent Morrison and warn him about the ambush. Tell him Detective Kowalski is compromised in planning to eliminate federal witnesses. Save his life, and I'll consider our business arrangement concluded. What's the catch? No catch. You save Agent Morrison, he arrests Detective Kowalski, and I disappear. Everyone wins. I stared at her, trying to understand the angle I was missing. Why would you help an FBI agent who's investigating your operation? Dr. Vance smiled, and for the first time it looked genuinely warm. Because Agent Morrison is one of the few truly honest law enforcement officers in this city. Detective Kowalski and his associates represent everything I've been fighting against. Corruption, abuse of power, criminals hiding behind badges. She handed me a phone. My operation blackmailed corrupt officials to control their behavior. Agent Morrison investigates corrupt officials to put them in prison. We're not enemies, Alex. We're on the same side. I took the phone with shaking hands. And my family will be left alone, as will you. I have enough money to disappear permanently and enough compromising information on my former clients to ensure they won't come looking for me. Dr. Vance checked her watch. You have 2 minutes before Detective Kowalski makes his move. Choose wisely. I dialed Agent Morrison's number. Alex, where are you? We lost visual when those devices went off. Listen carefully. Detective Raymond Kowalski is compromised. He's planning to ambush you and your team in the eastern section of the park. It's a setup. How do you know this? Dr. Vance told me. She's not the enemy, Agent Morrison. She's been targeting the same corrupt officials you've been investigating. There was a long pause. Are you with her now? Yes. In the maintenance shed behind the trees. She has evidence against Detective Kowalski and several other corrupt cops. Stay where you are. We're coming to you. Dr. Vance was already packing her equipment into a large duffel bag. Tell Agent Morrison he'll find Detective Kowalski and 3 associates positioned behind the park's eastern pavilion. They're armed and expecting federal agents to respond to a fake emergency call. I relayed the information, and Agent Morrison immediately started coordinating with his team. Alex, keep Dr. Vance there until we can secure the area. But when I turned around, Dr. Vance was gone. The back door of the maintenance shed was open, and I could see tire tracks in the dirt where a vehicle had been parked. On the table, she'd left a USB drive with a note. Everything Agent Morrison needs to clean up this city. Tell him I said thank you. 20 minutes later, Agent Morrison and his team had arrested Detective Kowalski and his 3 associates. The USB drive contained evidence of corruption involving dozens of police officers, city officials, and business leaders. This is the most comprehensive corruption investigation I've ever seen, Agent Morrison told me as FBI agents processed the crime scene. Dr. Vance documented everything. Bribes, illegal activities, cover-ups, abuse of power. It's like she was building a case for us. What happens now? Now we clean house. This evidence will put a lot of bad people in prison and restore some integrity to local government. Agent Morrison looked at the maintenance shed, which had been converted into a sophisticated intelligence operation. Dr. Vance was right about one thing. She and I were fighting the same enemies. I just wish she'd chosen legal methods. Over the next several months, Agent Morrison's investigation resulted in 37 arrests, including Judge Harrison, D.A. Foster, Detective Kowalski, and most of the other people who'd been paying Dr. Cross's blackmail operation. The trials revealed the full scope of corruption in our city. Millions of dollars in bribes, dozens of cases compromised, hundreds of victims denied justice. My family was never contacted by Dr. Vance or her associates again. Dad found steady work with a legitimate construction company and hasn't placed a bet in 8 months. Mom completed a full alcohol treatment program and now volunteers at a recovery center. My brother graduated from his halfway house program and is living independently while attending community college. We still don't talk about the blackmail operation or what happened during those terrifying weeks. Some trauma is too deep to process in family conversations. But last week I received a postcard from someone traveling in Costa Rica. No message, just a photo of a beautiful beach at sunset. The handwriting on the address was familiar, and there was a small flower drawn in the corner. The same flower Dr. Vance used to doodle during our conversations in the storage unit. I've decided to interpret it as her way of saying goodbye. Agent Morrison was promoted to head the FBI's new Public Corruption Task Force, based largely on his success with the Dr. Cross investigation and subsequent arrests. I went back to therapy, with a different doctor this time, someone Agent Morrison recommended, who specializes in trauma recovery and has been thoroughly vetted by the FBI. It's taken months, but I'm finally sleeping through the night again. Yesterday, I testified before a grand jury investigating the broader corruption network that Dr. Vance's evidence exposed. The prosecutor told me my testimony will help ensure that the people responsible for hurting so many families will spend years in prison. When it was over, I walked out of the courthouse and felt something I hadn't experienced in a long time. Genuine hope for justice. Not the twisted vigilante justice that Dr. Vance had convinced herself she was delivering, but real justice. Transparent, legal, and accountable to the people it's supposed to serve. As I drove home, I thought about all the families who'd been hurt by the corruption Dr. Vance had been documenting. Judge Harrison's sentencing decisions that had let violent criminals walk free. D.A. Foster's buried sexual assault cases. Detective Kowalski's protection of drug dealers who sold poison to kids. Dr. Vance's methods had been criminal, but her targets had been genuine threats to public safety. I still don't know how to feel about her. What I do know is that threatening innocent families to achieve even legitimate goals is unacceptable. The moment Dr. Vance pointed that gun at me and threatened my brother, she became just another criminal hiding behind noble justifications. But I also can't ignore the fact that her evidence is putting corrupt officials in prison and giving victims a chance at real justice. The world isn't divided neatly between heroes and villains. Sometimes the people fighting for justice use unjust methods. Sometimes the people we trust to protect us are the ones we need protection from. All I can do is try to make better choices than the people who came before me. When I got home that evening, my parents were cooking dinner together, laughing about something they'd seen on television. My brother called to tell us about a promotion he'd received at work. For the first time in years, our family felt normal, healthy, safe. That night, I threw away Dr. Vance's postcard without looking at it again. Some chapters need to stay closed. 3 months later, I was at work when Agent Morrison called with unexpected news. Alex, we've received a communication that I think you should know about. From Dr. Vance? Indirectly, the Costa Rican government contacted us about an anonymous donation to their wildlife preservation program. $1 million, with a note requesting that the funds be used to protect endangered species from illegal hunting and habitat destruction. I wasn't sure why this mattered to me. The donation came with a specific request, Agent Morrison continued. They want the preserved area named the Valentina Cross Memorial Wildlife Sanctuary. My blood went cold. Dr. Cross is still alive. She's serving 15 years in federal prison. Exactly. which means Dr. Vance is either planning something or this is her way of honoring her former partner's memory while she's still alive to appreciate it. Agent Morrison paused. There's more. The donation paperwork included coordinates for a location in the sanctuary where Costa Rican authorities found a buried cache containing additional evidence of corruption in our city. Financial records, recorded conversations, documents that tie several prominent families to organized crime activities. She's still working. It appears so. Even from Central America, Dr. Vance is continuing her anti-corruption mission. The question is whether we should be grateful for the evidence or concerned about her methods. I thought about the families who would finally get justice because of Dr. Vance's relentless documentation of criminal activity. I also thought about the families who'd been terrorized and manipulated by her blackmail operation. Agent Morrison, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you think she was right about fighting corruption by any means necessary? There was a long silence. I think Dr. Vance was someone who saw real injustice and decided she couldn't wait for legal systems to address it. I understand her frustration, but the moment she chose to hurt innocent people to achieve her goals, she crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. He was right, of course. Good intentions don't justify harmful methods. The families she helped through her evidence donations will get justice through legal proceedings. The families she hurt through her blackmail operation will need years to recover from the trauma she caused. After Agent Morrison hung up, I sat at my desk thinking about moral complexity and the danger of believing that noble goals justify any methods. Dr. Vance had convinced herself that she was a force for justice, but she'd become exactly the kind of person who abuses power to control others, just with different motivations than the corrupt officials she'd been targeting. The scariest part was how easy it had been for her to recruit me. When she'd threatened my family, I'd agreed to help restart her blackmail operation without hesitation. I'd threatened Judge Harrison and DA Foster and 8 other people, using their own criminal activities as weapons against them. For a brief time, I'd become part of the system I'd originally fought to destroy. That realization has haunted me for months. During therapy sessions, I've explored how trauma and fear can push even well-intentioned people toward morally questionable choices. My therapist has helped me understand that being coerced into criminal activity doesn't make me a criminal, but it does make me responsible for ensuring it never happens again. I've also learned that healing requires honest acknowledgement of harm, both the harm done to me and the harm I participated in doing to others. Last month, I wrote letters to Judge Harrison, DA Foster, and the other former clients I'd threatened on Dr. Vance's behalf. I didn't apologize for exposing their criminal activities. That information needed to be public. But I did apologize for the fear and intimidation I'd caused through my delivery method. Most of them didn't respond, which I understood. Judge Harrison wrote back with a short note. Your threats were terrifying, but they also forced me to confront the consequences of my choices. I've been attending Gamblers Anonymous and cooperating fully with federal investigators. Thank you for helping me find the courage to do the right thing, even if your methods were wrong. It was the first time anyone had acknowledged that complex situations can involve multiple layers of right and wrong simultaneously. 6 months after the Costa Rica Wildlife Sanctuary incident, Agent Morrison called with his final update on the Dr. Vance investigation. We're officially closing the case, he told me. Costa Rican authorities have confirmed that Dr. Vance died in a hiking accident 3 weeks ago. Her body was found at the bottom of a cliff in the wildlife sanctuary she'd funded. I felt an unexpected wave of sadness. Was it really an accident? The investigation suggests she was photographing endangered birds when the cliff edge gave way. She was carrying professional camera equipment and field guides for documenting wildlife species. Agent Morrison paused. There's something poetic about her dying while trying to protect something beautiful from destruction. It's the kind of ending she would have chosen for herself. He was probably right. Dr. Vance had spent her life fighting what she perceived as predatory behavior. Ending her life while protecting vulnerable wildlife from predators seemed fitting. Her estate made provisions for ongoing donations to anti-corruption organizations and wildlife preservation programs around the world. She left behind a fortune worth nearly $50 million. All from blackmail money? Most of it, yes. Blood money being converted into legitimate charitable work. Another moral complexity for the philosophers to debate. After the call ended, I realized that Dr. Vance's death had given me closure I didn't know I needed. For months, I'd been looking over my shoulder, wondering if she might resurface with new threats or demands. Now I could finally move forward without that fear. But I've also spent time thinking about her legacy. The evidence she provided has resulted in major reforms to our city's judicial system, police department, and political infrastructure. Dozens of corrupt officials are in prison. Hundreds of victims have received justice they'd been denied for years. At the same time, her blackmail operation traumatized countless innocent family members who had nothing to do with their relatives' criminal activities. My family is healing, but we're still dealing with trust issues and anxiety that may never completely disappear. The children and spouses of Dr. Vance's other targets are struggling with similar trauma. Was the justice worth the collateral damage? I honestly don't know. What I do know is that legal systems, however flawed, exist for important reasons. Due process protects innocent people from false accusations. Transparency ensures that justice is accountable to the communities it serves. Proportional punishment prevents minor crimes from receiving major penalties. Dr. Vance's vigilante approach bypassed all of those protections in pursuit of faster results. She achieved her goals, but at a cost that can't be measured purely in terms of corrupt officials imprisoned or victims who received justice. Today marks exactly 1 year since Dr. Cross was sentenced and Dr. Vance first contacted me. My family had dinner together to mark the anniversary, not to celebrate, but to acknowledge how far we've come in our healing process. Dad has been promoted to construction site supervisor and is considering going back to school for project management certification. He hasn't gambled in over a year, and his sponsor says he's one of the most dedicated members of their Gamblers Anonymous group. Mom completed her alcohol treatment program and now works as a counselor at the same facility where she got help. She says helping other people in recovery has been crucial to maintaining her own sobriety. My brother graduated from community college with an associate degree in automotive technology and was accepted into a 4-year program with a full scholarship. He's been sober for 18 months and recently started dating someone he met in his study group. I've been promoted to a management position at work and I'm considering law school. Agent Morrison thinks I'd make a good prosecutor, given my experience with corruption cases and my understanding of how criminal organizations operate. The idea of fighting corruption through legal channels appeals to me. As we sat around the dinner table tonight, my brother raised his glass of soda and proposed a toast to surviving the worst year of our lives and coming out stronger. We clinked glasses, and for the first time in months, I felt genuinely optimistic about our future. But as I was leaving my parents' house, I found an envelope tucked under my car's windshield wiper. Inside was a photograph of Dr. Vance standing next to the Costa Rican Wildlife Sanctuary sign, dated just 2 weeks ago, 1 week after Agent Morrison had told me she was dead. On the back, someone had written, "Some missions are too important to abandon. We'll be in touch." I sat in my car for 20 minutes staring at that photograph, trying to understand what it meant. Had Dr. Vance faked her death to escape law enforcement attention? Was someone else continuing her work using her identity? Were there other partners in her operation that we'd never identified? Or was this someone's idea of a sick joke, designed to terrorize me long after the original threats had ended? I thought about calling Agent Morrison, but what would I tell him? That I'd received a mysterious photograph that seemed to suggest Dr. Vance was still alive, contradicting official Costa Rican police reports? He'd think I was being paranoid or suffering from trauma-related delusions, but the photograph looked legitimate. The wildlife sanctuary sign was real. I'd looked it up online after Agent Morrison's call. The timestamp showed it was taken recently, and Dr. Vance's face was clearly visible, showing none of the injuries that would be expected from a fatal cliff fall. I drove home and locked all my doors and windows before calling my family to make sure they were safe. Everyone was fine, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched again. That night, I barely slept. Every sound outside my apartment sent me to the window to check for surveillance vehicles. Every phone notification made me jump, expecting another threatening message. By morning, I'd convinced myself that the photograph was either a fake or an old image being used to manipulate me. Dr. Vance was dead. Agent Morrison had confirmed it through official channels. Costa Rican authorities had investigated thoroughly. Her estate was being distributed according to legal procedures. The photograph was someone's attempt to resurrect old fears for unknown reasons. I threw it away and went to work, determined not to let paranoia destroy the progress my family had made. But 3 days later, I received another envelope. This one contained a newspaper clipping from a Costa Rican publication, dated 1 week ago. The headline, translated from Spanish, read, "American philanthropist Dr. Patricia Vance donates additional $2 million to environmental protection programs." The article included a photograph of Dr. Vance shaking hands with Costa Rican government officials at what appeared to be a formal ceremony. She was definitely alive, which meant Agent Morrison had been given false information about her death, or he was deliberately lying to me about the investigation's conclusion. I couldn't decide which possibility was more disturbing. That evening, I called Agent Morrison from a payphone outside a grocery store, not trusting my cell phone's security. "Alex, why are you calling from an unknown number? I need to meet with you immediately, somewhere private. What's wrong?" "Dr. Vance is still alive. I have proof." There was a long pause. "That's impossible. We confirmed her death through multiple sources." "Then your sources were wrong. Meet me at the coffee shop where we first discussed the case. 1 hour. Agent Morrison was waiting when I arrived, looking concerned and slightly annoyed. "Alex, grief and trauma can sometimes cause people to see things that aren't there. It's a normal part of the healing process." I handed him the newspaper clipping and the photograph. His expression changed as he studied the evidence. "Where did you get these?" "Someone left them on my car, just like the original threats from Dr. Vance's operation." Agent Morrison pulled out his phone and made a call to someone in Costa Rica, speaking rapidly in Spanish. After 10 minutes of conversation, he hung up and looked at me with a grim expression. "You're right. Dr. Vance is alive. The body we identified was apparently someone else, a tourist who fell from the same cliff and was carrying false identification. So she faked her death. It appears so, and she's been using the time since her supposed death to expand her operations internationally." Agent Morrison showed me his phone, which displayed a news article about corruption investigations in 3 different countries, all triggered by anonymous evidence donations. Dr. Vance has been traveling throughout Central and South America, providing information to law enforcement agencies about international money laundering, drug trafficking, and political corruption. She's still playing vigilante, just on a global scale. "Exactly. And now she's apparently ready to resume contact with you." Agent Morrison closed his phone and looked at me seriously. "Alex, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Do you want Dr. Vance to contact you again?" The question caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" "I mean, setting aside the trauma and fear she caused your family, do you believe in what she was trying to accomplish? Do you think corrupt officials should be held accountable by any means necessary?" I thought about Judge Harrison, who was now in prison for taking bribes and was finally receiving treatment for his gambling addiction. I thought about DA Foster, who was serving time for burying sexual assault cases and could never again prevent rape victims from getting justice. I thought about Detective Kowalski, who was no longer protecting drug dealers and accepting payment for looking the other way, while communities were destroyed by addiction. "I believe corrupt officials should be held accountable," I said carefully, "but through legal processes that protect innocent people from collateral damage. And if legal processes are too slow, too easily corrupted themselves?" Agent Morrison was testing me, trying to determine if I might be recruited again by Dr. Vance's operation. "Then we work to improve legal processes, not abandon them." He nodded approvingly. "Good answer. Because Dr. Vance is going to contact you again, and she's going to offer you a choice. Help her continue her international anti-corruption work, or risk having your family's safety threatened again. You think she'll try to blackmail me into cooperation?" I think she sees you as someone who proved effective at her methods and might be willing to join her mission voluntarily now that you've seen the positive results. Agent Morrison leaned forward. Here's what I'm going to ask you to do. When she contacts you, agree to meet with her. Wear a wire, help us gather evidence of her current operations, and assist us in finally bringing her to justice. You want me to become a double agent. I want you to help us stop someone who's using criminal methods to fight crime. No matter how noble her intentions, Dr. Vance is a dangerous person who needs to be in prison. I agreed to Agent Morrison's plan, but spent the next week dreading Dr. Vance's inevitable contact. When it came, it wasn't what I expected. Instead of a threatening letter or mysterious phone call, I received an official-looking package from a law firm in Costa Rica. Inside was a legal document, written in both Spanish and English, offering me a position as International Coordinator for Anti-Corruption Documentation. The salary was $200,000 per year, plus expenses and travel costs. The job description involved reviewing evidence of corruption provided by confidential sources, documenting criminal activities by government officials and business leaders, and coordinating with law enforcement agencies to ensure evidence was properly presented for prosecution. Everything about it sounded legitimate, except the contact information at the bottom of the document listed Dr. Patricia Vance as the program director. I called Agent Morrison immediately. She's offering me a job. What kind of job? I read him the entire document. Alex, this is actually brilliant. She's created what appears to be a legitimate anti-corruption organization, complete with legal documentation and government recognition in Costa Rica. But it's really just a front for her international blackmail operations. So what do? Accept the position, fly to Costa Rica, meet with her, gather evidence of her real activities, and help us build a case for extradition. And if she detects that I'm working with the FBI, then you'll be in serious danger. But it's the only way we're going to stop her permanently. I spent 3 days considering the offer. On one hand, Dr. Vance had terrorized my family and forced me to participate in criminal activities. She deserved to be in prison for her methods, regardless of the righteousness of her goals. On the other hand, the evidence she provided had resulted in dozens of corrupt officials being imprisoned and hundreds of victims receiving justice. Her international work was apparently having similar positive effects in other countries. Was I helping law enforcement stop a criminal, or was I helping corrupt systems eliminate someone who threatened their power? The moral complexity was exhausting. Finally, I called Agent Morrison and agreed to his plan. I'll accept Dr. Vance's job offer and help you gather evidence against her. Excellent. We'll provide you with surveillance equipment and establish communication protocols for regular check-ins. Agent Morrison, what if she's right? What if legal systems are too slow and corrupt to address the problems she's fighting? Then we work to fix legal systems, Alex. We don't abandon the rule of law just because it's imperfect. 2 weeks later, I was on a flight to Costa Rica, carrying a suitcase full of surveillance equipment disguised as personal electronics. The San Jose airport was bustling with tourists and business travelers, and I felt completely out of place among people who were visiting for vacation or legitimate work purposes. I was there to spy on someone who might be a criminal mastermind or a misguided crusader for justice. Dr. Vance met me at the airport, looking exactly as I remembered. Silver hair, kind eyes, grandmother-like appearance that completely concealed her true nature. Alex, so wonderful to see you again, she said, embracing me like an old friend. I'm so excited to show you what we've been building here. She led me to a sleek black car with tinted windows, and we drove through the busy streets of San Jose toward what she described as her organization's headquarters. Our work has expanded far beyond what Valentina and I originally envisioned, she explained during the drive. We're now documenting corruption in 7 countries and have helped law enforcement agencies secure convictions against over 200 officials. How do you gather evidence on such a large scale? We recruit people like you, individuals who have been personally affected by corruption and want to make a difference. They volunteer to document criminal activities in their communities and provide that information to our organization. Dr. Vance's headquarters turned out to be a beautiful colonial building that had been converted into modern office space. The sign outside read, Central American Institute for Government Accountability. Inside, dozens of people were working at computers, analyzing documents, and coordinating with what appeared to be law enforcement agencies around the world. Everything looked completely legitimate. Welcome to the future of anti-corruption work, Dr. Vance said proudly. Transparent, international, and completely legal. She gave me a tour of the facility, introducing me to staff members who seemed genuinely committed to fighting government corruption through proper channels. This is our evidence analysis department, she explained, showing me a room where people were carefully documenting financial records and communications. Everything we gather is properly authenticated and legally obtained before being shared with authorities. And the blackmail operations? Dr. Vance looked confused. What blackmail operations? Alex, we don't blackmail anyone. We simply document criminal activities and provide that documentation to law enforcement agencies. It's up to them to decide how to proceed with prosecution. I was starting to feel disoriented. Either Dr. Vance had completely changed her methods since our confrontation in the storage unit, or she was presenting an elaborate facade to convince me that her organization was legitimate. What about threatening families to ensure cooperation? What about demanding payment from people to keep their secrets hidden? Those were temporary measures used during a crisis situation, Dr. Vance said dismissively. Once I established this organization, there was no longer any need for such methods. She led me to her office, which was decorated with photos of her shaking hands with government officials and law enforcement leaders from multiple countries. Alex, I understand your confusion. The person you met in that storage unit was someone who had been pushed to desperate measures by a corrupt system, but I've evolved beyond that approach. Dr. Vance sat down behind her desk and pulled out a thick folder. Here's what I'm offering you. A legitimate position with a legitimate organization, fighting corruption through legal channels. No threats, no blackmail, no harm to innocent families. She opened the folder to reveal dozens of case studies, showing how her organization's evidence had led to successful prosecutions of corrupt officials. Every person we've helped put in prison was guilty of crimes that hurt innocent people. Every piece of evidence we provided was legally obtained and properly authenticated. Every family that benefited from our work received justice through official legal proceedings. I spent the rest of the day touring her facilities and meeting with staff members. Everyone I spoke with seemed genuine in their commitment to fighting corruption through legal means. The organization had been recognized by multiple governments and had received awards for its contributions to international anti-corruption efforts. Dr. Vance's personal transformation appeared to be real, but Agent Morrison's warnings echoed in my head. People like Dr. Vance often present facades of legitimacy while continuing criminal activities in secret. That evening, I returned to my hotel room and activated the surveillance equipment Agent Morrison had provided. I recorded everything I'd observed during my first day at Dr. Vance's organization, including detailed descriptions of the staff, facilities, and operations. Nothing I'd seen suggested ongoing criminal activity. But I'd only been there for one day. Over the next week, I worked alongside Dr. Vance's staff, learning how they gathered and analyzed evidence of corruption. The process was methodical and seemed completely legitimate. Local volunteers would report suspected criminal activities by government officials. Staff members would investigate those reports, gathering documentation through legal means like public records requests and witness interviews. Verified evidence would then be compiled into comprehensive case files and provided to appropriate law enforcement agencies. I watched several cases progress from initial reports to successful prosecutions, with no signs of blackmail or threats being used against anyone. Dr. Vance's organization appeared to be exactly what she claimed, a legitimate anti-corruption group operating through legal channels. But on my 8th day in Costa Rica, I discovered something that changed everything. I was working late in the organization's document archive when I found a locked filing cabinet in a storage room that wasn't part of the regular tour. Using lockpicking skills I'd learned during my teenage rebellious phase, I managed to open the cabinet. Inside were files on dozens of cases that weren't part of the organization's public work. These files contained evidence of corruption, but also records of payments made to Dr. Vance's organization by the people being investigated. Judge Harrison's file showed that he'd made monthly payments totaling $300,000 over the past year. D.A. Foster's file showed similar payments. Detective Kowalski's file included recordings of phone calls where he begged Dr. Vance's representatives not to release evidence that would destroy his career. The blackmail operation was still active. It had just been disguised as a legitimate anti-corruption organization. I photographed every document in the secret files, then carefully locked the cabinet and returned to my hotel room. That night, I called Agent Morrison using a secure communication protocol he'd established. "She's still running a blackmail operation," I told him. "The legitimate organization is just a front. She's still threatening people and taking payments to keep their secrets hidden. Can you get more evidence? I have photographs of financial records and correspondence that prove ongoing extortion activities." "Excellent. Continue gathering evidence for a few more days, then extract yourself from the situation. We'll coordinate with Costa Rican authorities to arrest her." But when I returned to the organization's headquarters the next morning, Dr. Vance was waiting for me with a security team. "Alex, we need to have a conversation," she said, gesturing for me to follow her to a conference room. Inside the conference room were the photographs I'd taken of the secret files, printed out and arranged on the table. "You're working with Agent Morrison," Dr. Vance said calmly, "which means you're not here to join our mission. You're here to destroy it. I'm here to stop you from hurting innocent people." "Innocent people?" Dr. Vance laughed. "Alex, everyone in those secret files is a criminal who has escaped justice through corruption and influence. Judge Harrison took bribes that let violent criminals go free. D.A. Foster buried rape cases for political donations. Detective Kowalski protected drug dealers who sold poison to children." She sat down across from me. "These people aren't innocent victims. They're predators who use their positions to hurt vulnerable people. My organization ensures they face consequences for their actions, through blackmail and threats. Through accountability, we give them a choice: make restitution for their crimes and change their behavior, or face public exposure and criminal prosecution." Dr. Vance pulled out a file folder and opened it on the table. "Judge Harrison has used the money he paid our organization to fund scholarships for children from low-income families. D.A. Foster has donated her payments to organizations that support sexual assault survivors. Detective Kowalski has contributed to drug treatment programs." She was right. The financial record showed that the money extorted from corrupt officials was being redirected toward charitable causes related to their crimes. "We're not enriching ourselves," Dr. Vance continued. "We're forcing criminals to invest in fixing the problems they created. But you're still using threats and intimidation. We're using consequences. These people committed crimes that hurt innocent victims. We're ensuring they face appropriate penalties, even when legal systems fail to hold them accountable." Dr. Vance closed the file and looked at me seriously. "Alex, I'm going to offer you the same choice I offer everyone who discovers our real operations. Join us voluntarily or leave and never speak about what you've learned. And if I choose to expose your operation, then you'll be exposing an organization that has helped hundreds of victims receive justice and forced dozens of corrupt officials to make amends for their crimes." She stood up and walked to the window overlooking the organization's main work area. "Look at those people, Alex. They're not criminals hiding in shadows. They're dedicated professionals working to make their communities safer and more just." I looked down at the staff members I'd been working with for the past week, people who seemed genuinely committed to fighting corruption and helping victims of government abuse. "The blackmail operations fund the legitimate work," Dr. Vance explained. "Money from corrupt officials pays for investigation costs, staff salaries, and victim assistance programs. It's a perfect system of justice. It's still illegal, So was the Underground Railroad. So was harboring Jews during the Holocaust. So was hiding political dissidents from authoritarian governments. Dr. Vance returned to her seat. Sometimes legal and moral are not the same thing, Alex. Sometimes fighting injustice requires methods that don't conform to the systems that enable injustice in the first place. I spent the rest of the day thinking about her words. That evening, I called Agent Morrison and told him about my discovery of the secret blackmail files. She's definitely still running criminal operations, I confirmed, but the money is being used for legitimate charitable purposes, and the targets are all genuinely corrupt officials. Alex, it doesn't matter how she uses the money or whether her targets deserve punishment. Blackmail is a federal crime and she needs to be prosecuted. But what if she's right? What if legal systems are too corrupt to address the problems she's fighting? Then we work to reform legal systems. We don't abandon the rule of law. Agent Morrison paused. Alex, I need to know that you're still committed to helping us arrest Dr. Vance. Your testimony will be crucial for securing an extradition order. I thought about my brother, who was now thriving in school and recovery because Dr. Vance's threats had forced our family to confront our problems. I thought about the sexual assault survivors who were finally receiving justice because D.A. Foster could no longer bury their cases. I thought about the communities that were safer because Detective Kowalski could no longer protect drug dealers from prosecution. I'll testify, I told Agent Morrison, but I wanted on record that Dr. Vance's methods, while illegal, have produced positive results that legal systems failed to achieve. That's not relevant to the criminal charges. It's relevant to justice. The next morning, Costa Rican police arrested Dr. Vance at her headquarters. I watched from across the street as they led her away in handcuffs, while her staff members stood in confused shock outside the building they thought was legitimately fighting corruption. Many of those staff members had been working for Dr. Vance without knowing about the blackmail operations. They genuinely believed they were part of a legal anti-corruption organization. Their faces showed the same betrayal and confusion I'd felt when I first discovered Dr. Cross's recording scheme. That afternoon, Agent Morrison arrived in Costa Rica to coordinate Dr. Vance's extradition to the United States. Excellent work, he told me as we sat in the U.S. Embassy. Your testimony and the evidence you gathered will ensure she faces serious prison time. What happens to her organization? The legitimate operations will probably be shut down as part of the criminal investigation. The blackmail files will be used as evidence in her prosecution. And the staff members who didn't know about the illegal activities? They'll be questioned and released if they're found to be innocent of wrongdoing. I thought about the dozens of dedicated professionals who would lose their jobs because of their unwitting association with Dr. Vance's criminal activities. Agent Morrison, what if we're wrong about this? Wrong about what? What if Dr. Vance's methods, however illegal, are more effective at fighting corruption than our legal systems? Agent Morrison looked at me seriously. Alex, I understand your moral conflict. Dr. Vance has achieved positive results through criminal means, but we can't allow people to decide for themselves which laws to follow based on their personal assessment of justice. Why not? Because then everyone becomes judge, jury, and executioner. Corrupt officials could justify their crimes by claiming they're fighting greater injustices. Drug dealers could claim they're providing medicine that legal systems make too expensive. Vigilantes could claim they're protecting communities that police can't protect. He was right, of course. The rule of law exists to prevent chaos, Agent Morrison continued. It's imperfect, but it's better than allowing individuals to make unilateral decisions about justice. That evening, I visited Dr. Vance in the Costa Rican jail where she was being held pending extradition. She looked tired but not defeated. Alex, I'm glad you came. I wanted to thank you. Thank me? For helping me understand that my methods were causing harm to innocent people. Your family's experience taught me that I needed to find better ways to fight corruption. I was confused. But you were still running blackmail operations. Not blackmail, restitution programs. The people making payments were doing so voluntarily as part of agreements to make amends for their crimes. Dr. Vance pulled out a folder that her lawyer had apparently allowed her to keep. Judge Harrison volunteered to fund educational scholarships after we provided evidence of his bribery. D.A. Foster voluntarily established a victim assistance fund after we documented her prosecutorial misconduct. Detective Kowalski voluntarily contributed to drug treatment programs after we exposed his protection of dealers. They volunteered because you threatened to expose them if they didn't cooperate. We offered them a choice between public exposure and private restitution. Most chose restitution because it allowed them to make amends without destroying their families' lives. Dr. Vance opened the folder to show me signed agreements between her organization and various officials. Everyone who participated in our restitution programs did so through legal contracts overseen by attorneys. No one was threatened or coerced. I studied the documents carefully. They looked legitimate. Detailed agreements outlining specific charitable contributions and behavioral changes in exchange for keeping certain evidence private. This is still extortion. This is restorative justice. Instead of simply punishing criminals, we're requiring them to repair the harm they've caused. Dr. Vance leaned forward. Alex, traditional prosecution would have put these people in prison at taxpayer expense while providing no direct benefit to their victims. Our approach required them to personally fund programs that helped the communities they harmed. She was making a compelling argument, but I couldn't ignore the fear and trauma her operation had caused my family. What about the threats against innocent family members? That was the old operation, before I learned better methods. Once I established the legal organization in Costa Rica, there was no need for threats against families. But you still threatened me and my family to force my cooperation. Dr. Vance looked genuinely remorseful. Yes, and I've regretted that approach ever since. It was wrong to involve your family in my conflict with corrupt officials. I should have found ways to achieve my goals without causing harm to innocent people. She closed the folder. That's why I created the legitimate organization, to continue fighting corruption without hurting families like yours. I left the jail feeling more confused than ever about Dr. Vance's true nature and motivations. Was she a criminal who had learned to disguise her illegal activities behind legitimate facades? Or was she someone who had genuinely evolved from using harmful methods to developing more ethical approaches to fighting corruption? The next day, I testified before a Costa Rican magistrate about Dr. Vance's blackmail operations and provided evidence supporting her extradition to the United States. But I also testified about the positive results her organization had achieved and the apparent evolution in her methods from threats to voluntary restitution agreements. The magistrate seemed as conflicted as I felt. This case presents unusual complexities, he said after reviewing all the evidence. Dr. Vance's methods appear to have evolved from clearly criminal activities to potentially legitimate restorative justice programs. He granted the extradition order but noted that U.S. prosecutors would need to carefully distinguish between Dr. Vance's earlier criminal activities and her later work through legal channels. 2 weeks later, Dr. Vance was returned to the United States to face federal charges for her original blackmail operation. I testified at her trial, describing both the criminal activities that had traumatized my family and the legitimate anti-corruption work I'd observed in Costa Rica. The jury struggled with the same moral complexities that had confused me. Dr. Vance was clearly guilty of blackmail, threats, and extortion related to her original operation with Dr. Cross, but her later work appeared to represent a genuine effort to fight corruption through legal means while requiring criminals to make restitution for their crimes. After 3 days of deliberation, the jury reached a verdict that surprised everyone. Guilty on charges related to the original blackmail operation, not guilty on charges related to her work in Costa Rica, which they determined represented legitimate restorative justice programs rather than criminal extortion. Dr. Vance was sentenced to 5 years in prison for her role in the original blackmail scheme, but the judge acknowledged her apparent rehabilitation and commitment to legal methods of fighting corruption. During sentencing, the judge made a statement that summarized the moral complexity of the entire case. Dr. Vance's original methods were clearly criminal and caused significant harm to innocent families. However, her evolution toward legal approaches demonstrates that people can learn from their mistakes and find better ways to achieve legitimate goals. He continued, "The challenge for our justice system is determining how to punish past crimes while encouraging future reform." Dr. Vance will serve time for her criminal activities, but her later work fighting corruption through legal channels represents the kind of civic engagement our democracy needs. After the trial, Agent Morrison and I had coffee to discuss the case's conclusion. "Are you satisfied with the verdict?" he asked. "I think it was fair. She was held accountable for her crimes but given credit for changing her methods." "Do you think she'll return to Costa Rica after serving her sentence?" "Probably. Her organization there is doing important work, and it appears to be genuinely legal now." Agent Morrison nodded. "I've been thinking about this case for months, and I've reached a conclusion that might surprise you." "What's that?" "I think Dr. Vance was right about one thing. Legal systems are often too slow and corrupt to address the problems she was fighting, but I still believe her criminal methods were wrong." He stirred his coffee thoughtfully. "What we need are more legal ways for people to fight corruption effectively, stronger whistleblower protections, better investigation procedures, faster prosecution timelines, and more resources for victims of corruption." Exactly. Dr. Vance identified real problems that our systems weren't addressing adequately. Instead of dismissing her concerns because of her criminal methods, we should be asking how to achieve her legitimate goals through legal means. 6 months later, Agent Morrison was promoted to head a new FBI task force focused on developing innovative approaches to fighting government corruption. The task force's mission included creating legal channels for people like Dr. Vance to contribute to anti-corruption efforts without resorting to criminal methods. I was offered a position as a consultant to the task force, helping them understand how corruption affects families and communities. I accepted the position and have spent the past year working with federal agents, prosecutors, and community organizations to develop better ways of fighting government corruption. The work has been challenging but rewarding. We've helped establish legal support networks for families affected by corruption, created new whistleblower protection programs, and developed faster procedures for investigating and prosecuting corrupt officials. Last month, I received a letter from Dr. Vance, who is now serving her sentence at a federal facility. She wrote, "Alex, I've been following the work you're doing with Agent Morrison's task force, and I'm proud of the progress you're making. You found ways to fight corruption that I never considered, legal ways that protect innocent families while still holding criminals accountable. I hope my story serves as both a warning and an inspiration. A warning about how noble goals can justify harmful methods if we're not careful, and an inspiration to keep fighting injustice, even when the legal path seems longer and more difficult. The work you're doing now represents everything I should have been doing from the beginning. Thank you for showing me a better way." Today marks 2 years since this entire ordeal began with my discovery of Dr. Cross's recording scheme. My family has healed in ways I never thought possible. Dad has been promoted to project manager at his construction company and is considering starting his own business. He's been gambling free for over 2 years and sponsors other people struggling with addiction. Mom completed her counseling certification and now runs a support group for families affected by addiction and trauma. She's been sober for almost 2 years and recently started dating someone she met in her recovery program. My brother graduated from his 4-year program with a degree in automotive engineering and was hired by a company that designs electric vehicles. He's been sober for over 2 years and is engaged to the woman he met in study group. I've been accepted to law school and will start next fall, with plans to specialize in prosecuting corruption cases. The work I've done with Agent Morrison's task force has shown me that legal systems, while imperfect, can be improved through dedicated effort and innovative approaches. Dr. Vance was right that corruption causes real harm to innocent people, and that traditional legal processes are often too slow to provide adequate protection. But she was wrong to think that criminal methods were the only alternative. What we've learned is that fighting corruption effectively requires multiple approaches: stronger legal protections, faster investigation procedures, better support for victims, and innovative ways for citizens to contribute to anti-corruption efforts. Most importantly, we've learned that sustainable justice must be built on legal foundations that protect everyone's rights, not just the rights of people we agree with. Dr. Vance's story taught me that good intentions aren't enough to justify harmful methods, but that doesn't mean we should abandon the fight against injustice. It means we need to find better ways to fight. I still think about her sometimes, sitting in prison, probably planning legal ways to continue her anti-corruption mission after her release. Part of me hopes she'll contact me when she gets out. Part of me hopes she won't. But if she does, I'll be ready with legal alternatives to offer her. Because the fight against corruption is too important to abandon, even when the path forward isn't clear. And sometimes the most important battles are won by people who refuse to give up, even when everyone tells them the system can't be changed. The system can be changed. It just takes patience, persistence, and a commitment to doing things the right way, even when the wrong way seems faster. That's the lesson I learned from Dr. Vance's story. That's the lesson I hope to teach others through my future work as a prosecutor. And that's the lesson I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. Some fights are worth having, some methods are worth abandoning, and some people are worth saving, including the ones who think they're beyond redemption. Everyone deserves a second chance to do the right thing. Even people who've done terrible things for good reasons. Even people who've hurt innocent families while fighting corrupt systems. Even people like Dr. Vance and even people like me.